The night over Earth was calm, but in the silence of space something new had arrived. Astronomers in their observatories first noticed the strange signals. They were faint pulses, not like anything they had seen before. At first, people thought it was just another cosmic mystery, perhaps a star dying far away. But then the signals grew stronger, more regular, like a heartbeat. Humanity held its breath, because everyone knew this was not natural. This was not a star. This was not a planet. This was something else. The world turned its eyes to the skies, and soon telescopes captured them. Shadows moving against the stars, vast shapes gliding into the solar system. They did not shine. They absorbed light, making them appear as black silhouettes drifting in the void. When scientists calculated their size, people could hardly believe it. Each of these ships was larger than any city on Earth. They were alive with strange energy, glowing in patterns like veins of fire under their surface. It was the arrival of a fleet, an armada, and no one knew if they came in peace or with war. At first, governments tried to calm the public. They said there was no reason to fear. They said communication was the next step. But fear had already spread. People whispered in crowded streets. What if they were not here to talk? What if they were here to conquer? Soldiers were placed on alert. Space agencies activated defense satellites, and the first warships were quietly ordered to orbit. Humanity had dreamed of contact for centuries, but no one had ever imagined it would feel like this. Days turned into weeks, and still the alien fleet did nothing. They just floated at the edge of the solar system, watching, waiting. Their ships were silent. No signals came from them, no sound. Only that dark glow moving like blood beneath their hulls. It was as if they were alive, breathing in the emptiness. The world was trapped between fear and wonder. The aliens did not attack, but their silence was more terrifying than any weapon. Leaders argued in secret meetings. Some said they should send peace messages. Others said they must prepare for the worst. A decision was made to try diplomacy first. Across the void, human voices were sent. Greetings in many languages. Promises of peace. They said humanity wished to share knowledge, to be friends among the stars. For long days, nothing returned. Then one night, across every channel, a single alien voice answered. It was deep, cold, and slow. Its words carried no emotion. Leave the stars. They are not for you. The message shocked the world. It was not a greeting. It was a warning. Yet humanity had come too far to turn back. They had walked on the moon, built colonies in orbit. They had touched Mars with machines. The stars had already become part of their dream. The thought of retreat was impossible. Humanity sent another message, refusing to give up their place in the cosmos. The aliens did not reply again. Their silence returned, heavier than before. Strange events began to follow. Colonists on Mars reported ghostly lights in the skies. Satellite feeds showed shadows moving past the planets, always too fast and too far to capture clearly. People grew restless. Every night news channels replayed the same footage of alien ships hanging at the edge of the system, always there, always waiting. Children asked their parents if monsters were coming. Families prayed, scientists searched for answers, and generals prepared their weapons. One evening, a young astronomer stood at his telescope on the dark side of Earth. He was the first to see the alien fleet shift. Their silent watch was over. Slowly, like giants waking from a dream, the black ships began to move. They were coming closer. Their shadows grew larger against the stars, spreading across the sky. At the same time, Earth's defense systems detected strange energy waves, readings so powerful they broke sensors. It was no longer a question of if, but when. The governments rushed to calm the panic. They said there was still hope for peace. But everyone could see the truth. Humanity had been warned. The aliens had given them a choice, and humans had refused to bow. Now, the future of Earth balanced on the edge of a knife. The first part of the story was ending, and everyone knew it. They should have left the humans alone. Yet they had come, and they were waiting. Waiting for something no one on Earth could understand. The astronomer who first saw them whispered as the sky turned darker with their approach. His voice trembled with fear and awe. It is beginning. And in that moment, humanity understood. The stars were no longer silent. The universe was no longer safe. The Watchers had come, and soon the first blow would fall. Humanity's story of survival was about to begin. The warning had been spoken, and it echoed in the minds of everyone on Earth. Leave the stars, they are not for you. Those words were repeated again and again on every news channel. They were printed in every newspaper. They were whispered in classrooms, in markets, and in homes. Humanity had waited for centuries to hear a voice from beyond the stars, but no one expected the first message to be a threat. The world trembled between fear and anger. Some believed the aliens meant no harm. Some believed it was only a test. Others felt certain it was the beginning of something dark. World leaders met in secret rooms. They debated long into the nights. Some leaders argued that humans must obey the warning. They said Earth was too weak to fight, too fragile to stand against such a fleet. They said survival depended on surrender, but others refused. They said humanity had a right to explore, a right to reach for the stars. They spoke of courage, of history, of those who gave their lives to reach the moon and beyond. They said turning back now would mean humanity had no future at all. The scientists were divided too. Some wanted to study the alien message, to search for hidden meaning. Perhaps it was only a misunderstanding, perhaps the words were only a fragment of something larger, but the military was not convinced. They saw the silence of the alien ships, their endless watch from the edge of the solar system. They saw it as a sign of danger, a storm waiting to break. Every general knew what the silence meant. The aliens were waiting, and one day they would strike. Humanity tried once more to speak. Messages of peace were sent again, stronger, louder, carried by powerful transmitters. They sent greetings in every human language. They sent music, art, images of life on Earth. They sent maps of the solar system. They said humans wanted to share, not to fight, but no answer came. The fleet did not move. The dark giants drifted like shadows, cold and patient. Their silence grew heavier with each passing day. On Mars, colonists lived with fear. They watched the skies above the red deserts and waited. Children asked their parents if the aliens would attack. Families stayed close to their shelters. Pilots patrolled the skies with small defense craft. On Earth, the same fear spread. In crowded cities, people gathered in public squares to watch the news. They stared at giant screens that showed the black ships on the edges of the system, still and waiting. It was like watching wolves circle outside the fire. Whispers of panic grew louder. Some said the world should stop building ships, stop sending probes into space. They believed the aliens would only leave if humanity obeyed. But others grew angry. They asked, who were these strangers to command Earth? Who gave them the right to say humanity could not walk among the stars? The anger spread like fire, and people began to chant in the streets, the stars belong to everyone. In a hidden room under the Earth's surface, the leaders made their choice. They would not stop. The human dream was too strong, too deep in the heart of every person. Humanity would continue to explore. They would not bow. They would not give up the sky. The decision was broadcast to the world. The people cheered, some with courage, some with desperation. The words were simple. We will not leave the stars. But with those words came a shadow. The alien fleet did not answer. They only waited. It was the silence of hunters before the leap. And as weeks passed, small signs appeared. Strange energy waves touched the edge of the system. Instruments on Earth recorded pulses of power, invisible but strong. Probes sent toward the fleet vanished without trace. Satellites fell dark in sudden bursts of static. Something was moving, in the dark, and humanity could not see it. One night, a group of colonists on Mars saw lights in the sky. They thought it was only a storm of dust or a meteor passing overhead. But the lights were not falling. They were circling. The colonists reported shadows above the atmosphere, shapes too large to be anything human. The images reached Earth and panic returned. The aliens were not just waiting. They were watching. They were already moving closer, step by step, unseen, but everywhere. The soldiers trained harder. Defense fleets prepared in silence. Massive carriers were built in orbit, bristling with weapons. Families said goodbye to those chosen to guard the skies. In every nation, people whispered the same. Question, would the aliens attack? No one knew when or how, but everyone could feel the weight of it. The silence was too perfect, too heavy. It was like the pause before thunder, the deep breath before a scream. And in that silence, humanity stood firm. They would not leave the stars. They would not surrender the dream. They would build. They would fight if needed. They would hold their place in the endless night. Even as fear grew, a new fire rose in the hearts of many. A fire of defiance. For better or worse, the choice had been made. The aliens had warned them and humanity had refused. The astronomers who watched the skies said it best, their eyes never leaving the black shadows at the edge of the system. They whispered the words again and again. They are waiting. The world listened. The world prepared. Humanity did not know when the storm would fall, but it was coming and it would change everything. The silence finally ended. It began on a clear morning when a colony ship traveling near Mars sent out a desperate signal. The voice of the captain was broken. With static, his words filled with fear. We are under attack, alien ships, weapons. They are everywhere. The message cut off with a scream, and then there was only silence. On Earth, the news spread like fire. The people had feared this moment, but still it felt unreal. The colony ship carried families, workers, and scientists, not soldiers. It was meant to bring hope and life to Mars. Now it was nothing but a wreck floating in the void. No one knew how many had survived, if any at all. The image of the burning ship flashed on every screen, its broken hull drifting through the darkness. Warships from Earth rushed to respond. Engines burned as fleets moved from orbit toward Mars. The commanders gave orders to protect the survivors, to fight if needed. But when they arrived, the attackers were gone. Not a single alien ship was in sight. Only debris and silence remained. The wreckage of the colony vessel floated like a graveyard, pieces shining in the red light of Mars. The soldiers who saw it clenched their fists. Some cried inside their helmets. The silence of the aliens was more frightening than their attack. They had struck without warning, and then vanished. Reports came from survivors. A few escape pods were found drifting far from the wreck. The people inside were shaken and weak, but alive. Their voices trembled as they told the story. The aliens had appeared like shadows, their ships black and massive. Weapons cut through metal as if it were paper. The humans had no chance. One survivor whispered the same words again and again. They were watching us, waiting, and then they killed us. On Earth, fear turned into rage. The streets filled with protests. People demanded action. They demanded that their leaders protect them. Families who had lost loved ones cried out for justice. For the first time, the world was united not by hope, but by anger. Humanity understood the truth. The aliens had given their warning, and now they had carried out their first strike. This was no longer a question of peace or surrender. This was war. The leaders gathered again. Their faces were heavy with sorrow, but their voices were hard. They spoke of the attack, of the families who had died. They said humanity could not step back now. They must defend themselves. They must be ready for the next strike. The decision was clear. Earth would fight. The words were broadcast to the world. The people listened in silence, then raised their voices in defiance. The cry was the same everywhere. They should have left the humans alone. In orbit, warships were armed. Carriers released smaller crafts. Pilots trained with grim faces. They knew the enemy could strike anywhere at any time. Soldiers drilled in the dark halls of new space stations, preparing for battles they could not imagine. Engineers worked without rest, building weapons stronger than anything before. Humanity had never been so afraid, but also never so determined. Still, the aliens remained unseen. They did not answer. They did not send messages. They did not return to Mars. Some said they were testing humanity. Some said they were laughing in the dark. But the survivors from the colony ship knew better. They had seen the cold precision of the attack. The aliens were not testing, they were hunting, and this was only the beginning. Nights became heavy with fear. Every signal from space was studied. Every flicker of light was watched. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said alien ships had been seen near Jupiter. Some said Earth's moon was being watched. Some said the aliens could already be inside the atmosphere, hidden in the clouds. The world no longer slept easy. The shadow of war stretched across every land. On Mars, the colonists buried the bodies of those lost from the colony ship. They held the funeral under the red sky, their voices trembling as they spoke. We will not forget. We will not forgive. The words carried across the radio to Earth. People cried, people clenched their fists. Humanity felt the weight of the promise. Back on Earth, the generals prepared a warning of their own. They recorded a message, their faces cold and hard. We do not fear you, we will not run. If you bring war, then we will fight. The message was sent into the dark, into the silence where the alien fleet drifted. No one expected a reply, and none came. The aliens remained quiet, but their silence now felt like a smile, a cruel, unseen smile. In the heart of every human, a new fire was born, the fire of survival, the fire of defiance. They knew the war had only just begun. They knew the aliens would return, and when they did, the fight would be greater. The memory of the colony ship burned in every mind. The broken hull near Mars became a symbol, a scar, a promise. The astronomers looked once more into the sky. They saw the black shadows still waiting at the edge of the system, unmoving, silent, but full of menace. And they whispered the words again. They should have left the humans alone. The universe had shifted. The first blow had been struck. The war was no longer a fear of tomorrow. It was here, and it was only beginning. The attack on the colony ship had changed everything. Humanity was no longer wondering if the aliens would strike. They knew it now. They had seen the burning wrecks. They had buried the dead. They had heard the screams of survivors who spoke of black ships that moved like shadows. The silence of the aliens was no longer mystery. It was a weapon. And against that silence, humanity made its choice. They would not surrender. They would not turn back. They would fight. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth stood together. Old enemies set aside their anger. Borders no longer mattered. The only enemy was in the sky. The leaders announced their alliance in one voice. Their words were broadcast across the planet. Humanity is one. We will defend ourselves. We will not be broken. In cities across the world, people cheered and cried, some from hope, some from fear, but all felt the weight of unity. Humanity had never been so close. Factories worked day and night, not for cars, not for trade, but for warships. Enormous carriers rose in orbit. Built with steel and fire, massive engines roared as battleships were armed with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile silos. New technologies were rushed from secret labs, weapons never tested now placed on the line. Engineers worked with bloodshot eyes. Scientists stayed awake for weeks. The dream of the stars was now the dream of survival. Families watched as sons and daughters left for training. Pilots climbed into cockpits of sleek new fighters. Soldiers marched into stations built in the dark of space. No one asked to be spared. Everyone knew they had a part. Some would fight. Some would build. Some would pray. Humanity was preparing for the storm that everyone knew was coming. The first blow had already fallen, and the next could come at any moment. But humanity did not only build weapons, they built hope. Schools taught children about courage, about the power of standing together. Artists painted the stars with human faces. Songs were written about defiance, about never bowing to the silence of the aliens. People whispered the same promise at night. They will remember us. In the secret halls of Earth's Defense Council, plans were drawn. Maps of the solar system were lit across glowing tables. Commanders pointed to Mars, to Jupiter, to the edge of the system, where the alien fleet drifted. They spoke of strategies, of traps, of lines of defense. They knew the aliens were stronger, but they also knew humans had something more. The will to fight, the will to endure. They believed it could be enough. Rumors spread of a secret project. Some said Earth was building a warship larger than any before, powered by something not of this world. Some whispered of alien technology captured from debris. Others believed it was only a story to keep the people strong. The truth was hidden, locked away in the deepest labs. But the hope was real. Humanity believed in its secret weapon even if they did not know what it was. On Mars, the survivors rebuilt. They turned their grief into strength. New fortresses rose across the red deserts. Defense cannons were placed. On the mountains, colonists trained with weapons, no longer just workers but soldiers. They sent a message to Earth, their voices strong. We will not run. We will fight with you. The people of Earth heard it, and their hearts grew stronger. Humanity was not divided, not broken, but rising. Still, the alien fleet remained silent. At the edge of the solar system, the black giants drifted in the void. Their glowing veins pulsed with energy, but they did not move. It was as if they were watching, waiting for the humans to finish their work. Their silence was heavy, and in that silence fear grew, but so did resolve. Humanity did not forget the colony ship. Humanity did not forget the warning. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, a soldier looked to the sky. He saw the stars and whispered, "We are ready." It was not just his voice. It was the voice of millions. Humanity had prepared as best as it could. Warships floated in orbit, shining like blades. Fleets patrolled, near Mars, scanning the dark for shadows. Colonies armed their defenses. Earth stood united. The astronomers watched the edge of the system night after night. They saw the same shapes, unmoving, silent, vast as cities. They wrote in their reports the same words. The fleet is waiting. The generals read the reports with cold eyes. They knew the aliens would not wait forever, and when they finally moved, it would be for war. In the silence of space, a message was prepared. It was not a plea, not a cry for peace, but a warning of humanity's own. We are not afraid. We will not bow. If you want war, then you will find it. But you will also find that humanity does not break. The message was sent into the void, into the silence where the alien fleet drifted. No reply came, but somewhere in the darkness, the aliens were listening. And as the world slept under the stars, the fleets of humanity kept their watch. Soldiers stood ready, pilots waited with engines humming. Leaders planned, engineers built, and families prayed. The storm had not yet fallen, but all could feel its shadow. The first war of the stars was coming. Humanity had chosen to fight, and in their hearts they whispered the same promise. They should have left the humans alone. The fleets of Earth moved into the dark. Engines burned like small suns as warships spread through the void between planets. Commanders gave orders in steady voices, but inside their hearts they carried fear. Every soldier knew the silence of the alien fleet would not last forever. They were waiting for the moment when the shadows would strike. Humanity was ready, or at least they believed they were. The first encounter came without warning. A patrol of human warships was scanning near the asteroid belt, the crew reported. Nothing unusual, only rocks and silence. Then the sensors began to flicker. Strange distortions spread across the screens. Before anyone could react, the black ships appeared. They slid out of the void, as if they had always been there, massive and silent. Their weapons ignited in sudden. Bursts of light, beams of energy tore across the human patrol. The first human ship was ripped apart in seconds, its hull melting as if it were paper. Explosions lit the rocks of the asteroid field. Pilots screamed warnings calling for backup. Missiles launched, railguns fired. Human ships fought with all their power. The void became fire. But the aliens moved with cruel precision. They cut through the fleet as if it were nothing. One commander shouted into the comms, "Do not retreat. Make them bleed for every ship." The human vessels tightened their formation. They released traps hidden among the asteroids, mines that exploded with shattering force. Several alien ships were caught in the blasts. Their dark hulls cracked, glowing veins dimming. For the first time, humans saw alien warships fall. It gave them hope. But the cost was heavy. One by one, human ships were destroyed. The patrol fought like lions, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched. Still, They refused to surrender. They rammed their ships into the enemy when their weapons failed. They detonated their reactors when surrounded, turning themselves into fireballs that consumed alien vessels. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to show the enemy that humans would never bow. Reinforcements finally arrived. Carriers from Earth surged into the battlefield. Fighters poured into the void, swarming like hornets. The aliens pulled back, vanishing into the dark as quickly as they had appeared. The field was left littered with wrecks, both human and alien. The battle had been a slaughter, but it was also a message. Humanity could fight. Humanity could kill them. The survivors were brought home. Their ships scarred, their faces hard. They spoke of the battle with quiet voices. They described the alien weapons, the shadows that appeared without, warning the cold precision of their strikes, but they also spoke of victory, small but real. For the first time, humanity had seen alien blood. For the first time, the silence of the fleet had been broken. News spread across the world. The images of human ships fighting in the dark filled every screen. Families wept for the dead, but they also cheered for the living. They cheered for the courage of the patrol that refused to run. Songs were written about the battle. Stories were told of the soldiers who rammed their ships rather than surrender. Humanity had been tested, and though it bled, it did not break. But the aliens were not finished. Days later, sensors picked up movement near Jupiter. A massive fleet appeared, larger than anything seen before. Their ships burned with strange energy. Their silence was more terrifying than their weapons. They had retreated only to prepare for something greater. Humanity braced itself. Fleets moved into position. Every pilot, every soldier knew the next. Battle could decide everything. In the war room on Earth, generals studied the reports. Their faces were grim. They spoke of traps, of ambushes, of drawing the enemy into choke points. They knew they could not face the aliens in open battle. They had to fight with cunning. They had to turn every rock, every planet, every shadow into a weapon. Humanity could not win by strength. They could only win by will. A new plan was born. Human fleets would scatter. They would lure the enemy into ambushes. They would bleed them piece by piece. They would show the aliens that humans were not prey, but predators. The plan was dangerous, but it was the only path. Humanity had chosen defiance, and now they would show it with fire. That night, as Earth's cities slept under the stars, the soldiers prepared. Pilots sat in their cockpits, checking weapons one last time. Commanders whispered farewells to their families through old recordings. Engineers prayed as they armed the last missiles. The silence before the storm was heavy, but in that silence humanity found strength. They would not be broken. They would not retreat. And when the alien fleet moved again, vast and dark, humanity was waiting. Mines floated in hidden fields. Fleets lay silent behind the shadows of moons. Weapons glowed, engines whispered, the trap was ready. The first war in the stars had begun, and every human whispered the same words in their hearts. They should have left the humans alone. The battlefield near Jupiter was still burning when the humans realized something important. They had survived the ambush. They had lost many ships, but the aliens had lost too. The dark fleet had pulled back, broken for the first time, and in that moment of silence after the chaos, humanity felt something new. They felt the first taste of hope. But the hope was fragile. Commanders knew the aliens would return with greater strength. The black ships were endless, more than anyone had imagined. The battle near the asteroid belt had shown humanity could fight, but it also showed the cost. They could not keep losing fleets at this rate. If the enemy truly wanted to erase Earth, they had the power to do it. Unless humanity found something stronger. That was when whispers spread of the secret project. It had been hidden deep under the oceans of Earth, built in secret caves and sealed hangars known only to the highest council. Now, with the war consuming the skies, the time had come to reveal it. From the surface of the sea, a shadow began to rise. It was larger than any ship humanity had ever built. It dwarfed the carriers and battleships. Its hull was dark, but pulsed, with glowing lines not unlike the alien ships themselves. It was the first human warship powered by alien energy. The ship's name was spoken with awe It was called the Aegis. It carried weapons no one had ever seen, railguns larger than skyscrapers, missile silos filled with warheads designed to pierce alien shields, and at its heart a core of stolen alien technology. Scientists had risked their lives to study fragments recovered from the wreckage of the first battles. For months they worked in silence, trying to understand the energy that flowed like blood through alien ships. They did not master it completely, but they learned enough to give birth to a weapon that could change everything. When the Aegis rose into orbit, the people of Earth cheered. They looked to the skies and whispered, "Now we have a chance." Pilots touched their ships and prayed to fly beside it. Soldiers on Mars raised their fists when they saw its image. For the first time, humanity felt not only fear but strength. They believed this ship could turn the tide. The aliens did not wait long. From the blackness of deep space, their fleet appeared again. This time they came in numbers beyond counting. Hundreds of ships, their glowing veins pulsing brighter than ever. Their silence was gone, replaced by thunder. Their weapons lit the void in storms of energy. They came not to watch, but to destroy. Human fleets formed their lines. Carriers released fighters, battleships opened fire. The void burned with explosions. Humans fought with fury, but even as they fought, they began to break. The alien fire was too strong. Ships cracked, fleets were scattered, hope trembled. It seemed the humans would be crushed once more. And then the Aegis arrived, engines blazing, its shadow covering the stars. Its massive guns roared. A beam of stolen alien energy erupted from its core, cutting through the black ships like lightning through glass. Alien vessels cracked and shattered, their glowing veins dimming as they fell into the dark. For the first time, the aliens hesitated. For the first time, they retreated from a human weapon. The humans cheered over their comms, their voices filled with disbelief and fire. "We can win. We can fight them." Pilots who had been moments from despair now fought with renewed strength. The fleets rallied around the Aegis, forming a shield, wall of steel and courage. Together they pushed the aliens back. The void that had seemed lost was now filled with the fire of human defiance. The battle raged for hours. Human ships burned, alien vessels shattered. Explosions lit the skies near. Jupiter finally, when the alien flagship cracked under the fire of the Aegis, the dark fleet pulled away. They retreated into the void, silent once more. The battle was over. Humanity had not only survived, they had forced the enemy to flee. On Earth, the news spread faster than light. People filled the streets waving, flags shouting, singing. Children laughed through tears, families embraced. Humanity had endured terrible losses, but they had stood their ground. They had shown the universe that they would not bow. And at the center of that hope was the Aegis, the ship that turned fear into defiance. But the leaders knew the truth. This victory was only the beginning. The aliens had seen humanity's strength. Now, they would return. They would come with greater fury. The war was not over, it had only entered a new stage. Yet for the first time, humans had proven something powerful. They were not prey. They were not weak. They were fighters. In the quiet after the battle, the crew of the Aegis stood together. Their captain looked into the stars and spoke softly. "They thought we would break. They thought we would run. But we are still here." The soldiers nodded. Their eyes burned with fire. Humanity had been given no choice but to fight. And fight they would. The alien fleet had wanted fear, but what they had awakened instead was resolve. Humanity had learned that they could hurt them. Humanity had learned that they could win, and deep in the hearts of every man, woman, and child came the same thought, a thought whispered in silence, a thought that would carry them into the next battle. They should have left the humans alone. The days after the victory near Jupiter were filled with both hope and fear. Humanity had seen the aliens retreat for the first time. They had seen the Black Fleet break under the fire of the Aegis, and they had proven they were not helpless. But everyone knew the war was not finished. The aliens had been wounded, but not destroyed. They would return stronger than before. On Earth, the people celebrated, cities lit the skies with fireworks, families cheered in the streets. Songs of courage and defiance echoed everywhere. Children drew pictures of spaceships and heroes for the first time. People felt pride instead of only fear. But in the war rooms, the leaders were silent. They studied the losses, the destroyed fleets, the burned colonies. They knew the truth. Humanity had survived, but just barely. The next battle would decide far more than pride. It would decide survival itself. The alien fleet did not wait long. At the edge of the solar system, dark shapes appeared once more, but this time there were more than ever before. Hundreds upon hundreds, stretching across the stars like a wall of shadow. Their glowing veins pulsed like rivers of fire. Their silence was gone, replaced by a low hum that spread across every frequency, a sound that shook the hearts of men. They were not coming to watch this time, they were coming to end it. The call went out. Every warship, every fighter, every carrier was summoned. Mars sent its soldiers, the moon sent its fleets, colonies. Across the system prepared for the final stand, in orbit around Earth, massive formations took shape, shining blades of steel and light. At the center of it all stood the Aegis, its alien-powered core glowing brighter than ever. Humanity gathered every weapon, every pilot, every soldier. There would be no retreat. The war had come to its greatest battle. When the aliens entered the inner system, the skies lit with fire. Missiles streaked across the void. Railguns roared. Fighters swarmed like angry insects. The alien fleet answered with storms of energy, beams that cut through human ships as if they were paper. Explosions burned across the darkness. Both sides clashed with fury. The battle was no longer about territory or warnings. It was survival, pure and final. The aliens pushed forward. Their ships were larger, stronger. They tore through the first human lines. Carriers fell. Battleships cracked. Fighters screamed through the chaos, trying to slow the tide. But humanity refused to break. Every pilot fought until their weapons were gone. Every soldier held the line even as ships burned around them. Sacrifice lit the skies. At the center, the Aegis fought like a giant. Its massive guns shook the void. Its alien core unleashed storms of light. Whole waves of enemy ships cracked under its fire, but the aliens focused their fury upon it. Dozens of black vessels surrounded the human flagship, their weapons striking from every angle. The shields of the Aegis trembled, its hull groaned. Sparks filled its decks as the crew fought to keep it alive. In the middle of the battle, the alien flagship appeared, larger than any seen before. It was like a moving fortress, its hull glowing. With rivers of burning light, it unleashed beams that shattered entire squadrons of human ships. Commanders stared at it with cold dread. They knew this was the heart of the enemy. If it survived, humanity would not. The order went out. All ships focus fire on the flagship, the human fleet answered. Missiles and beams rained down upon the alien fortress. Fighters dove in close, ramming themselves into its shields, sacrificing lives to break its defenses. Still, the flagship endured, its glowing veins burning brighter, but humanity would not surrender. Even as the losses mounted, the fleets pressed closer. The Aegis led the charge, its core blazing. It fired again and again, tearing pieces from the alien monster. At last, the enemy flagship began to falter, its lights flickering, its shields cracking. The aliens screamed across every channel, their voices filled with rage. "You were only animals. You should not stand against us," the humans answered with silence. Their weapons spoke instead. Fighters rammed, missiles detonated, railguns thundered, and with one final burst of energy from the Aegis, the alien flagship split apart. Its burning remains drifted into the void. For a moment, the battle froze. The alien fleet, once so furious, now trembled. Their silence returned, but it was no longer the silence of strength. It was the silence of shock. They had lost their leader, their fortress, and in that moment of hesitation, humanity struck again. The fleet surged forward. Pushing the aliens back one by one, the dark ships broke and fled into the deep black. The stars cleared. Humanity stood bloodied, but unbroken. The void was littered with wrecks. Thousands of lives lost. Ships reduced to fire and ash, but they had survived. They had done what no one thought possible. They had defeated the largest alien fleet ever seen. They had destroyed their flagship. The war was not yet over. But humanity had proven they could not be erased. On Earth, the message spread. Families wept for the dead, but they also stood tall. Children whispered the new truth. We are more than they imagined. Soldiers saluted the wrecks of fallen. Comrades, their faces hard but proud. And in the silence after the storm, the words carried across every heart. They should have left the humans alone. The wreck of the alien flagship drifted in silence, broken pieces glowing faintly as they fell into the endless dark. The human fleet floated among the ruins, battered and bloodied, but still alive. Pilots spoke in quiet voices over the comms, their words heavy with exhaustion. They had survived the greatest battle in human history. For a moment, it felt as though the war was ending, but deep inside, everyone knew this was not the last fight. The aliens did not vanish completely. Their fleet scattered into the outer dark, wounded but not destroyed. Sensors tracked them moving back toward the edge of the system. Some disappeared into the void. Others hid behind distant moons. They had lost their flagship, but they were not gone. Humanity had won a victory, but the war was far from finished. On Earth, the people waited for news. When the images arrived, showing the shattered alien fortress and the human warship still standing, the world erupted. Cities filled with voices, families embraced and cried. They wept for the dead, but they also shouted with pride. The fear that had once filled every corner of life was replaced with something stronger. Humanity believed in itself again. They had faced the darkest shadow in the universe and refused to break. But in the war rooms, the leaders were not celebrating. They studied the reports, page after page of losses, entire fleets gone, colonies burned, stations destroyed. The price of victory was beyond measure, and though the enemy had retreated, the commanders knew they would return. The aliens had been shocked by the strength of the Aegis and the courage of humanity, but shock would not last forever. They would come again, and next time they would be even more determined. The crew of the Aegis walked through their damaged ship. Sparks still fell from broken wires. Halls were scarred with smoke and fire. The captain stood on the bridge, looking out at the drifting wreckage of the alien flagship. He spoke softly, almost like a prayer. We made them bleed. They will never forget this day. His words carried across the comms, reaching soldiers and pilots who listened in silence. Then came the answer from a young pilot, her voice trembling but proud. They should have left us alone. Those words spread quickly, from one soldier to another, from one family to the next. They became the cry of humanity, simple but powerful. The aliens had thought humans were weak, nothing but animals crawling on a small blue world. But they had been wrong. Humans were more. Humans were stubborn. Humans were willing to fight no matter the cost. On Mars, the colonists held their own ceremonies. They lit fires under the red sky, remembering those who had fallen. They promised to stand ready for the next battle. On the Moon, engineers worked through the night, repairing warships, building new defenses. They knew the aliens would not give them rest. Every colony, every outpost, every soldier prepared for what would come. And yet, despite the losses, there was pride. Humanity had fought as one, no longer divided by nations or borders. The stars had forced them to unite, and in unity they had found strength. This was the lesson written in fire across the skies. If they remained one people, they could survive anything. The aliens, somewhere in the cold darkness, sent no message. Their silence returned, but now it was different. It was not the silence of hunters waiting for prey. It was the silence of an enemy who had been wounded, an enemy forced to respect the strength of those they once dismissed. They had wanted to erase humanity, but now they had to reckon with them. In the following days, the Human Council spoke to the world. Their faces were tired, their eyes heavy, but their voices were strong. They told the people that the war was not over, that the fight would continue. They spoke of courage, of sacrifice, of unity. They reminded everyone that survival had come at a cost, but also with a promise. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not surrender the stars. The people listened, and they understood. They had lost so much, but they had gained something greater. They had earned a place among the stars, not because it was given but because it was taken with blood and fire. Humanity was no longer a species hiding on a single planet. They had become defenders of their world, guardians of their future, warriors among the stars. That night, as the earth turned beneath the stars, a child stood on a rooftop. She looked up at the sky where the warships of humanity glowed faintly as they orbited. She whispered softly, "We are still here." Her parents heard her and smiled through their tears. That whisper, small and simple, carried the truth of the war. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had endured. The war was not over. But the aliens had learned a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was a force that would rise from the ashes again and again. And in the silence of the night sky, as the stars watched, the thought echoed in every human heart: they should have left the humans alone. Then they wanted war. Now they would remember humanity forever.